Welcome to this Curious Explainer video. So, look up at the sky on a bright, sunny day, right? What do you see? You see these beautiful, white, puffy shapes just kind of drifting lazily across the blue canvas. They look totally weightless, like absolute nothingness sculpted by the wind, but today we're going to absolutely shatter that illusion. Because those serene, floating shapes, they're actually hiding a massive, mind-bending physics mystery right in plain sight. We're going to dive into exactly how nature pulls off one of its most heavy-duty magic tricks every single day, right over our heads. Okay, let's start with a fact that sounds completely fake, but is actually 100% true. That average fluffy white cloud drifting over your head right now, it weighs about 1,000,000 pounds. Yeah, you heard me right, 1,000,000 pounds. And honestly, that's just an average-sized cumulus cloud. Some of the bigger storm clouds weigh significantly more than that. To truly wrap our heads around how staggering that number really is, think about it like this. 1,000,000 pounds is basically the equivalent weight of about 100 adult elephants. Or, if you prefer aviation, it's the weight of a fully loaded jumbo jet. We're talking fuel, passengers, all their heavy luggage, and even that one guy who insists on bringing a full-size pillow on a 2-hour flight. Now, if you tried to lift 100 elephants off the ground yourself, you'd need a small miracle, right? Yet the sky is lifting this immense weight effortlessly over every single city on Earth, without so much as breaking a sweat. Now, what's super interesting here is just how much our own intuition completely betrays us. Clouds just look like the softest things in existence. They look like they'd feel exactly like a giant marshmallow, if you could just, reach out and grab one. Cartoons always draw them as these plush pillows, and poets have literally spent centuries comparing them to cotton and lamb's wool. But science tells us a wildly different story. That entire visual, it's a total illusion. You see, a cloud isn't actually a solid, fluffy blob sitting in the sky. In reality, it's this massive, sprawling collection of liquid water droplets and solid ice crystals. And each one of these is impossibly tiny. To give you a sense of scale, a single droplet inside a cloud is so incredibly microscopic that you could easily fit thousands of them inside just one standard raindrop. But a cloud isn't just made of one droplet or 1,000. No, it's made of trillions upon trillions of them, densely packed into this massive three-dimensional shape that can stretch for miles and miles across the horizon. When you add up the microscopic weight of all those trillions of droplets, boom, you suddenly hit numbers in the millions of pounds. The brilliant astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson has actually chewed on this exact question on his Star Talk program, calculating how much a cloud really weighs. And his conclusion boils down to the exact same punchline that nature absolutely loves to play on us. As he says here, something can look entirely weightless and still be shockingly, overwhelmingly heavy. And that's because the physical property of weight and the visual aesthetic of, looking heavy are two completely different things. The cloud isn't somehow defying its own weight. It's simply playing a massive numbers game with physics, and it is totally winning. So, this brings us to the ultimate question, the part that really makes people's brains do a little backflip. If a cloud legitimately weighs 1,000,000 pounds, shouldn't gravity just yank it straight down out of the sky and crash it onto our heads like the world's worst, wettest pillow fight? Gravity is relentless, right? So what gives? Well, this perfectly illustrates the trick nature is pulling. Imagine dropping a heavy bowling ball from the ceiling. It smashes straight through the air and hits the floor instantly, right? Now imagine dropping a single fleck of glitter. The glitter drifts, it wobbles, it catches the air, and it takes its absolute sweet time getting to the floor. Why? Because air resistance matters a whole lot more when you're incredibly tiny and lightweight. Cloud droplets are the glitter in this scenario, not the bowling ball. Technically, gravity is pulling on every single droplet in that cloud all the time. They are, in fact, always falling, but they fall at an absolute snail's pace. And because they're falling so incredibly slowly, they run into a counterforce. Normal, everyday, rising currents of warm air radiating from the Earth's surface are actually strong enough to push those tiny, slow-falling droplets right back up into the sky. It creates this constant, invisible tug-of-war right above our heads. You've got gravity constantly pulling the droplets down and rising warm air constantly nudging them back up. So the crucial takeaway here is that this dynamic creates what we call a floating stalemate. That's a physical state where trillions of slowly falling droplets are constantly counteracted by rising air. You multiply this delicate balancing act across the trillions and trillions of droplets stretching for miles, and the macro result is a giant cloud that looks like it's just calmly parked in the sky. It looks perfectly static. But, as we're learning, appearances are completely deceiving. We have to ask ourselves, is anything inside that cloud actually standing still? The answer is a resounding no. Absolutely nothing is standing still.
Think of it exactly like a massive crowd of 1 million people at a high-energy rock concert, where every single person is jumping and bouncing on the spot. If you look at that crowd from a helicopter far away, the whole thing looks like one solid, hovering, unmoving mass. But when you get down close into the pit, you see that every single individual is in constant, chaotic motion. A cloud is exactly the same visual illusion. It's just made with tiny water droplets instead of concertgoers, and it uses gravity and warm air instead of a heavy baseline. Section 1. When gravity finally wins.
All right, let's see how this builds into the weather we actually experience on the ground. Because these floating stalemates, they don't last forever. Clouds aren't just passive sky decorations. They're the highly active engines behind a massive chunk of the weather chaos we deal with constantly. As those trillions of droplets bounce around up there, they constantly bump into each other. When they collide, they merge. And when they merge, they get bigger and heavier. Eventually, those droplets graduate from being lightweight, floating, glitter-sized particles into heavy, bowling ball-sized drops, at least on a microscopic scale anyway. They finally become too heavy for the rising warm air to hold up anymore. Gravity finally wins the tug-of-war, and when that happens, we experience rain. Yep, a rainstorm isn't a cloud breaking or bursting, it's simply millions of droplets graduating in size through collisions until they literally just fall.
And based on the conditions of that tug-of-war, we get entirely different weather outcomes. If the air is colder, those same graduating droplets freeze into ice crystals, and boom, you get a snowstorm. If you have a cloud stacked unusually tall, with violently strong updrafts slamming warm and cold air together, you get massive thunderstorms. Sometimes a raindrop gets launched up and down inside those violent drafts so many times it packs on layer after layer of ice, kind of like a snowball rolling around in a freezer, and gravity finally pulls it down as hail. And what about fog? Well, fog is literally just a cloud that got too comfortable and decided to hang out at ground level instead of high up in the sky. It's the exact same droplets, the exact same physics, just at a different altitude, and suddenly you can't even see to back out of your own driveway. Section 2. Clouds in your kitchen.
The really cool part is you don't actually need a multi-million-dollar weather balloon or a meteorology degree to see these massive atmospheric physics in action. You can actually witness this exact phenomenon at home. You have a working, moving model of this right in your kitchen. The next time you're boiling a pot of water to make tea or cook pasta, just take a second to watch the steam rising off the boiling pot. That visible swirling cloud of steam is behaving exactly like a giant cloud in the sky. The boiling water produces tiny, lightweight water droplets. Because they're so light, the warm air easily carries them, drifting them upward toward your ceiling. As they drift away from the heat, they cool down, they clump together, they get heavier, and eventually gravity wins, turning them back into visible drips of condensation on your kitchen window or ceiling. Or, think about taking a hot shower and watching your bathroom mirror fog up entirely. It is the exact same trick, the exact same atmospheric physics, just performing on a much smaller stage. It's just incredibly fascinating to realize that these very simple principles, tiny invisible droplets and rising warm air, scale up to become the literal engine behind every major weather event we experience globally. So the next time you're having a busy day and someone tells you to keep your head in the clouds, you can smile knowing a little secret about the sky. You can look up and remember that the fluffy white shape drifting above you is quietly hauling around the weight of a small airport's worth of jumbo jets. And it's doing all of that heavy lifting using absolutely nothing but tiny, microscopic droplets of water and a gentle breeze of rising warm air. When you contrast that staggering million-pound physical reality against the soft, poetic, weightless look of the sky, well, it's really not bad for something that just looks like a giant cotton ball, is it? If exploring the hidden physics of our world blew your mind even just a little bit today, and you'd like to catch more fascinating science facts drifting into your feed, I would be absolutely honored if you tap that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more amazing animated science facts coming in feature explainer videos. Until then, it really makes you wonder, if a simple cloud holds a million-pound secret, what other everyday mysteries are hiding in plain sight? Just waiting for us to ask, wait, how does that even work?